Hi, how's it going? Welcome to Movies You Missed. Now, I know it's been a while since I've recorded an episode. A long while. I actually can't even remember the last time I did it. I think the last episode I recorded was Stardust. Oof, that was a while ago. Because it is now, today is June 12th, 2022. It's 3:52 p.m. Sunday. So, Stardust was, woof, maybe like 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Sorry, I hope you don't mind if I slurp on you. A fresh cup of coffee right here. You know how you know how it is. You know how it happens. I don't think I've ever done one of these podcasts without having a cup of coffee in my hand. And usually it goes cold because I'm too busy talking. But I'm gonna try to drink this one before it gets cold, if you'll permit me, if that's okay. You know, if you guys can tolerate some slurpage, some slurpage. Anyway, yeah, it's a crisp, sunny afternoon. It's about 78 degrees. A little bit of a breeze. I got my cat right here next to me, underneath the desk here. His tail's wagging. I think he likes the sound of my voice for whatever reason. Yep. Self-depreciating comments. Minute and a half in. You know what you came for. But yeah. So today, it's so funny. I knew I wanted to do a special summer sequel series, which is where we only discuss underrated sequels for the entire summer. And I knew I wanted to do that, and I made a list of potential films for it probably back in December. And I said to myself, I'm not really gonna focus on this now. I'm just gonna, compile a list of potential films, and then by the time summer rolls around, I'll have done like a bunch of these, like 10 to 15 of these episodes. But I got sidetracked. Life happens, and I ended up, of course, only doing five, the five that you've heard about. And then, suddenly I was just like, oh man, it's already summer, so I guess we might as well start this off. And I'm approaching this summer sequel series. I don't know what the official title is going to be yet. But yeah, three S's. It's summer. We're doing sequels. And we're going to do, I think, realistically, I'm going to hold myself to at least one every 2 weeks. Starting now, about a week and a half before the official start of summer, and the official end of summer, which is September 21st. Even though September is kind of fall, really, because I like this idea of talking about underrated sequels so much, I'm going to try to squeeze at least like 9 episodes, 8 or 9 episodes in. So I wanted to go for as long as possible, and then we'll go right into some Halloween themed episodes for the beginning of fall. And I think this is going to be a big winter for us too, because it's cold. People don't really doing a lot of stuff. I'm an outdoorsman. I'm not. I mean, I like doing stuff outdoors, and I do a lot of stuff outdoors frequently. So in the winter you can't as much. So I'll have a lot more free time to do these sort of things. Watch movies and whatnot. And maybe I'll do like a theme for the winter. I don't know exactly. Maybe I'll do like a Christmas special. Um, and then like I know I just said we were gonna do some Halloween themed movies, like not like like a hollow like Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin or anything. I mean like horror movies. But I don't want to get backed into a corner and get pigeonholed. I'll do a horror movie any day of the week. I don't want to specifically ever do horror movies only on Halloween because I personally operate in a few niche movie genres. And horror is one of them. Horror is a big one for me. I'm a big horror fan. I watch a lot of horror movies, and I'm as a result of being such a horror fan, I'm pretty lenient on horror movies. So like a movie can be absolute dog shit, really. And I'll be like, that wasn't that bad. There's stuff to love. And they'll be like, really, Jace? Hellraiser Bloodline? And I'm like, just some cool sequences. And it's kind of cool how it transcends, three different generations of people. And they're like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess, but they kind of bungled the whole, everything else, right? And I'm like, well, so yeah, like horror, sci-fi, rom-com, um, buddy comedy, broad comedy, um, action adventure, thriller. Those kind of movies I have a lot of lenience with. So I'll be like, this is underrated. This is going on the podcast. And people are like, I don't really think it has any business going on the podcast. But anyway, yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is, if you don't like horror movies, this probably isn't the podcast for you. Because I think we're going to do a lot. And I'm never going to only do them at one specific time. Like this summer sequel summer series, it's going to feature a lot of horror movies, obviously. You know what I mean? Horror movies are especially, they like going back to that well. You know what I mean? Like, there's a million different horror franchises that have a million different installments. I mean, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Wrong Turn, Hellraiser, Texas Chainsaw. I mean, they all have like so many different installments. Like Hellraiser has like what, 11, 10? Halloween has like 13, 12. Friday the 13th has a slew, one of which we've already covered. But and I'm still compiling the official list. I'm trying to get some guests lined up for this summer series. And I've already got one guest lined up. We're going to be doing Halloween 2 with a special guest, surprise guest. And that'll be coming here maybe in the next 2 weeks. That might be like the second or third episode I do for this series. Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch is potential. Hellraiser Inferno, Jaws 2, Spider-Man 3. I think I have a list of like 35. And, like I said, we're going to do 8 or 9. So I'm going to do, I'm going to get the official list, hopefully to you guys by like next episode. Or maybe we can just do week to week. It'll be a surprise. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. But either way, I have, I think, at least the next like 3 summers of sequels planned. And that being said, there's no reason I can't do a sequel not in the summer. I could do a sequel in the winter. I just cover underrated, underappreciated movies, or movies that don't get the recognition that they deserve. I've discussed this before. I mean, like the gimmick of the podcast, really, when you get down to it, is kind of a catch-all, and I can kind of justify watching a lot of movies. You know what I mean? Like realistically, I think there's a lot of movies. Even this is the thought I've had to myself, that even there's a lot of movies that are like classics that are like really good. That if I can find maybe 5 people that I talk to that haven't seen it, I'll be like, well, time to grant more exposure to this movie. You know what I mean? Because I don't know who I was talking to recently. They were like, "Yeah, I've never seen a single Predator movie," and I'm like, "Not even one, not even the first one, which it's its 45th anniversary today." Um, and they're like, "Yeah, no, like people, it's like people, even though they have access to everything, every movie that's ever been created via the internet, they just don't go. They just like they don't bother going back because like." I mean, I guess we kind of really are in like the golden age of movie making and television, where they're like, it's like everybody wants to get their slice, and everybody has a streaming service that has their own original content. They release like numerous movies a week, numerous movies and new episodes of shows a day. So I mean, I get it. There's a lot. I mean, like even if you only watched movies that came out in your lifetime, I don't think you would ever be able to because they just come out with a new movie every week. You know. So I get it, but that's what this is for. This is for a lot of different things. You know what I mean? Again, maybe I didn't even say it, but welcome to Movies You Missed, the show where we talk about movies that people haven't seen, people don't appreciate as much, or that people give a bad rap to. I'm your host, Jace Cudlin, and maybe you're a first time listener, maybe you've been a fan since the beginning, but you know, welcome any and all. One second. It's kind of hot to be drinking like a hot cup of coffee, but you ever feel like cold brew coffee doesn't have caffeine in it? You know what I mean? Like it tastes so bad and it's so bitter, and I just put a bunch of cream in it to make it like taste better. And then I'm just like, is this even coffee? Am I even getting anything out of this? Um, Also, cold brew is so expensive. Like you buy like a container of it, like a not like a gallon even, but just like a 32-ounce container or whatever, and it's like I'm like, oh man, I can have 4 cups of coffee out of this, and it's like $9. Unbelievable. But anyway, oh, I don't think I've even mentioned what episode we're doing today, or like what movie we're doing in today's episode, which will be RoboCop 2. Okay, RoboCop 2 is my baby. I've been a huge fan of RoboCop, obviously, since I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, even though I know RoboCop came out obviously in the 80s and 90s, and like I was born in the late 90s. When you're a kid and you see RoboCop, you see a RoboCop action figure at like a garage sale or like an antique store or online, and it's like, whoa, what's going on there? That guy's a human being, but he's also a robot. As a little kid, that's like all you want. You said, oh, I can be a person, but also have the strength and cool armor of a robot. That's it. The RoboCop costume, or the RoboCop like suit design is so awesome. I actually didn't even bother looking up like who designed like that RoboCop outfit, obviously, because like we're doing the episode on the sequel. All my research is based on the sequel. But like, man, so cool. The way it looks is so awesome. I had a million RoboCop action figures when I was a kid. And like, wowie wow, does it blow me away? How unbelievable! Like the visor, oh man, and it's just like the black trim, like along his waist and like on his gloves. Really cool, really sweet. It's like I know RoboCop is like a really creative, original idea, but it's just like if you told me that it was just like, yeah, we created these movies and these TV shows basically to sell these toys, I'd be like, that's no problem. I have no qualms with that. It's like one of the coolest looking things I've ever seen. But yeah, we're talking about RoboCop 2, which is my baby. Like I said, like this is a movie that I think like ever since I was in like the seventh grade, I've been like lobbying for. Like I've always been a pretty big RoboCop head, but like and like RoboCop 1, of course, is like a masterpiece, obviously. If anyone's seen a RoboCop movie, they've seen the first one. And the first one, of course, is like everyone's favorite. It's like the only one that's like that like critics really liked and audiences also loved. Um, and I would say, of course, that it is superior to RoboCop 2. But I think this is a common trend that we'll explore during the sequel summer. I think sequels, well, as like Jamie Kennedy talks about in the Scream franchise, sequels um, by nature are kind of inferior because they're trying to recreate the success of the first one, and oftentimes they fail or they fall short. But because they like have to follow on the heels of something that was so great, it automatically makes it not as good. And if it's like it's like mid because it's like, oh, people are always going to compare it to the first one. It's absolutely garbage. I mean, sometimes if you watch a sequel, you'll be like, whoa, that's really good. But if you watch a sequel like right after the original, then it's like, whoa, that's especially bad because you're comparing the two right there. And there's always going to be that comparison, and because of that comparison, it's always really hard to like see a sequel for what it is, and like what it actually brings to the table, rather than having the ideas of the first one kind of tainting what you might think of the second one. So like RoboCop 2, or like RoboCop, directed by Paul Verhoeven. if I'm saying that correctly. Paul, am I saying that correctly? He's not here. I'm just kidding. Um, is like a sci-fi masterpiece. It's like a sci it's like a sci-fi staple up there with like Terminator and Alien. And it's like a near perfect film. Brilliant acting. You got Miguel Ferrer, Ronnie Cox, Red from that '70s show, Kurtwood Smith. Um, it's amazing. It's great. But RoboCop 2 is, I think, less slick and less smooth. But if anything, I think because it's a little more bonkers and a little more off the rails, and it's still just as like cool and interesting because of the time period it's set in and because of the technology that like these corporations have access to. I think it's still manages to become a really really interesting like film in a really really interesting world. Because like the first one, I mean, you got omni consumer products, OCP, being this dominant um, mega conglomerate corporation that is basically like richer than countries and it's like richer than it's like it's based in Detroit, but it's like has more money, influence, and power than the city of Detroit does. And it's like this is the dystopian world, I guess, more or less, that we're kind of heading for or living in already, where these corporations have so much power. And it's this corporation that builds RoboCop and vows to fight crime because the city of Detroit is incapable. And it's just like they created this world where these bloodthirsty, ruthless criminals, and like it takes something more than a human being to contain them. Um, so we step into that world again for RoboCop 2, and facing a different kind of problems than like just like hunting down the people who murdered RoboCop in the first one, and then also like taking down Ronnie Cox. Coffee Day. So RoboCop 2 is an American science fiction action film directed by Irv Kirsh and written by Frank Miller and Waylon Green. The film, like the original, stars Peter Weller in the titular role as RoboCop, Nancy Allen as his partner, Dan O'Hurley as the president of OCP, uh, all reprising their roles from the original. And then you have Belinda Bauer, Tom Noonan, and Gabriel Damon. Now, the plot of this movie, like the first one, follows RoboCop, who is a police officer who, in the first movie, is killed on like in active duty, and then his body, like parts of his body and his brain, are like fused with this state of the art like armor and technology to create RoboCop, like basically like the perfect police officer to in the attempt to clean up Detroit. And of course, he finds moderate success in the first one, and in the second one, we find him back in action. And this one follows RoboCop as he becomes embroiled in a plot by the greedy mega corporation Omni Consumer Products to bankrupt and take over the city of Detroit, while also having to deal with the spread of a new street drug called Nuke, and it's a gang of drug pushers who are also a cult led by the ruthless and deranged Kane, played by Tom Noonan. So RoboCop 2 was released on June 22nd, 1990, which was, I think, 3 years after RoboCop 1. And the movie grossed $45.7 million dollars against a budget of about $25 to $30 million. So it was a moderate success. Um, like I said, it was directed by Irving Kershner, the king of sequels, as I like to refer to him, because he directed Empire Strikes Back, you know, the best sequel ever made, in my opinion. Also the best Star Wars movie. And then he also directed Never Say Never Again, which is Sean Connery's last bout as James Bond, the non-Eon produced film, which sees an older James Bond kind of come out of retirement for one last job. But yeah, this movie, I think majority of the reason that this movie is so bonkers and just insane and just like really kind of off the rails is due to it being written by comic book artist Frank Miller. Which, if you know anything about Frank Miller he wrote for Daredevil, he wrote for Batman. You know, he wrote The Dark Knight Returns, and then he wrote. He popularized Daredevil in the '80s with Born Again, and I think like a 7 or 8 year run on Daredevil, which was like critically acclaimed and like I think everyone's favorite Daredevil arc ever. And he also wrote like Sin City and a bunch of stuff. He's written a bunch of other screenplays too, and just like he's a really famous comic book writer. Um, and it was written also. It was co-written by Waylon Green, who wrote a lot for television. He wrote for NYPD Blue, Law and Order, and ER. So I mean, like directed by Irv Kirsh, written by Frank Miller and Waylon Green. This movie was in pretty good hands. I mean, it's an action movie, action sci-fi movie, written by people who obviously understand sci-fi and action, are very well versed in what makes a good action movie. And I think that's a lot of the reason why there's so many things in this movie that work. And not even to mention that the DP cinematographer was Mark Irwin, who I didn't even know really. I think I'd heard the name a couple times, but I didn't realize how prominent Mark Irwin is in just my personal life. Um, Mark Irwin did the cinematography for listen to this: Fright Night 2, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the original Scream, 10 Things I Hate About You, and then like so many Cronenberg movies: The Fly, Dead Zone, Videodrome, Scanners, and The Brood. I mean, this guy might even be my favorite cinematographer of all time, up there with John Alcott and Dean Conde. I mean, this dude like straight up murders it. And this movie, if anything, is terrifically shot. Say what you want about the plot, or the acting, or the script, but what a brilliantly shot movie this is. I mean, they really do a good job of making um, current at the time Houston, Texas, look like a dystopian besieged Detroit. And even though there's so much of the stuff takes place in broad daylight, there's like suspense and like an intensity to it just because of how seedy and gross he kind of makes things appear. So this movie was distributed by Orion Pictures, and it has a runtime of 117 minutes, so pretty good runtime. Like we've discussed in the past, hour and a half to 2 hours is perfect. We all have. I mean, we love movies, but we all have things to do. We all have personal lives, professional lives. I don't have to sit. I don't have time to sit down and watch a 3.5 hour movie. So that's lengthwise, it's perfect. How did I view this movie? I would say watched this. Well, let me tell you, watching this movie was a roller coaster because I initially rented the DVD from the local library. Okay, I love to support my local library. Love to go there. It's a brilliant resource for this kind of thing. And I rented a DVD copy of RoboCop 2. So then I start watching the movie, and the DVD won't stop skipping. I mean, it's a little scratched up, but I didn't think it was this bad. But yeah, it's like skipping. I'm missing like kind of decent minute and a half chunks of this movie, and then all of a sudden, I mean, when we go through it bit by bit, beat by beat, I'll let you know exactly when my DVD just completely just froze, stopped working. Really like messed up my DVD player too. It wouldn't let me open the DVD player or even turn it off. I had to unplug it. And then I switched to my VHS copy. And you're probably thinking, well, Jace, why didn't you just watch your VHS copy in the first place if you own it on VHS? Well, it's because like the way my VHS tapes um, are positioned on the shelf. I have so many. I don't even want to get into the discussion of exactly how many I have, but it's a lot. And RoboCop 2 is in like a very precarious position in a very precarious stack. So I was just like, I'll let that lie. I'll just go rent it. I was at the library anyway, picking up some other stuff. I'm like, I might as well just get this now. Um, but yeah, even so, I was forced to resort to that anyway. So I watched the majority of this movie on my VHS copy, which of course played perfectly. It's in fantastic condition. Thank you, Orion Home Video, for making this durable, um, seemingly immortal product. All right, before we get into it beat by beat, bit by bit, scene by scene, and just really, really get into the nitty gritty of it, I'll just go over what some scores here. This movie has a 29% Rotten Tomato, pretty bad. Certified unfresh, I guess if that's a thing. Certified rotten, whatever. IMDb, 5.8 out of 10, not great. Voodoo, 4 out of 5. And then 88% Google user approval. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Again, I mean, you can never really go by critics' perceptions of things, or just you can never go by what the majority says, what anyone says. You always have to find out your own opinions on these kind of things. Because there's something out there for everybody, and every media, every piece of media, every art form has an audience. There's over 7 billion people in the world. You make a movie, you make a TV show, someone somewhere is gonna like it. So that's what we're here for. Um, oh yeah, interesting bit about this movie. This movie, I think, like I said, grossed $45 million at the box office. This movie made $22 million in video rentals. So it was a huge success when it came to home video. Like $22 million. It's bananas. All right. So let's get into the plot here. I have let's see how many I have. One, two, three, four, five, five, about 6 pages of notes. So let's go for it. So this movie uh, starts off immediately. I mean, of course, you see the MGM logo with the lion, and then Orion Pictures, and like what comforting images those are to see before a movie. You see the MGM, you see the lion roar, and you're in good hands. You know, I was pretty psyched. I said, "Oh, okay, cool." Something in my lizard brain from embedded in there since I was a child was just like, oh, "Okay, cool. All right, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be good." Immediately right off the bat, I realized there's no subtitles on the library DVD I'm watching. I'm trying to put on subtitles. It's not working. It's a bit of a bummer. I always watch movies with subtitles. And I expect no subtitles on a VHS copy. No subtitles on DVD. What's going on? But yeah, no RoboCop 2 titles, no nothing. The movie literally starts off with a satirical commercial for something called Magnavolt, which is a car security system. So they did this in RoboCop 1 a lot. Um, because they live in a dystopian world where everything is dominated by corporations. There's all of these like satirical, funny commercials for things, um, and they do that in this movie too. So the commercial, and this is the first thing you see in the movie, is for something called Magnavolt, which is a security system you can install in your car. that when a robber gets into it, um, and tries to start your car, they get like strapped in and electrocuted. So like the and the the person narrating the commercial and like advertising for this product is actually John Glover from Smallville, who plays Lex Luthor's dad, Lionel Luthor. So I thought that was interesting to see him. I was like, man, that guy's really really old. But yeah, so he's like, yeah, Magnavolt, protect your car and cause no damage to it, and there won't even be a smell. And then he kicks the guy like the commercial is a guy literally trying to rob a car, and then he gets in and he's killed. And then John Glover just yokes the dude's body out, gets in the car and drives away. He's like, Magnavolt. And it's like, man, pretty funny. And that's immediately how the movie starts. So, yeah, and the movie then goes to a news program which talks about all, it basically gives you a sense of what's going on in this RoboCop world of the future, where it's like, oh, there's an Amazon nuclear energy facility exploding. The Surgeon General was just gunned down for speaking out against nuke, the deadliest new drug in the streets. And then another funny thing, it shows in the news. It's like, oh, do you guys remember that robot that RoboCop fought in the last movie? The one that was like the main villain that they were trying to replace RoboCop with in that one, that kind of looked like an AT-AT. That one has been approved for in 5 major cities across the U.S., but it's malfunctioning, and you literally see this robot with like his foot in like a manhole, and he can't get it out, and he's like struggling and twitching and like short circuiting. And it's like, I'm like, that's kind of funny, I guess, if you've seen the original. But yeah, so they go back to this. They're talking about the Surgeon General getting assassinated for speaking out against the nuke. And then they show a brief video of the nuke cult leader, Kane, played by Tom Noonan. And he seems like kind of a religious, kind of spiritual nut who wants people to achieve like nirvana and absolute pleasure through his drug, nuke, which is like a little. It kind of looks like those weird do you remember those candies that were like wax bottles and they had little juice in them, and you would like bite off the tip and like slurp up the juice in there, and then you would just chew on the wax because it was a nice feeling. It looks like one of those, but you like put it into your neck and it ejects the liquid in there, and you like trip out. So that's what nuke is, and this nuke is being distributed and manufactured by this guy named Kane, who's played by Tom Noonan. He's the one who organized the Surgeon General's death, and the news program goes on to talk about how he's orchestrated numerous terrorist attacks and bombings, and how Nuke is continuing to like run rampant in the streets. And then the news program also talks about how OCP is Omni Consumer Products, who in the first movie was put in charge of running um, the police force of Detroit. So Detroit doesn't have the resources or the infrastructure to run the police effectively anymore. So the city of Detroit paid OCP to like arm and train the police officers. And OCP being in charge of police officers is cutting their salaries by 40% and causing the police officers to strike. So the police officers, half the police in Detroit are on strike, and crime is rampant, worse than it ever was in the first one. So this news program in the top of the movie is showing you exactly what you're going to be working with the entire rest of the movie. OCP and Kane and his followers are going to be a problem for RoboCop. And then there's a sequence where Detroit is depicted as this crime-ridden montage. Um, in this crime-ridden montage, where like this, you see the streets of Detroit, um, and there's prostitutes everywhere. People are getting beat up. This guy steals like an old homeless woman's purse and then he runs down the street and then is immediately beaten up by two prostitutes who then rob him of the purse and then whatever he has on him. And there's so much crime. It's like you can obviously tell that Detroit, because of this police strike, um, is just like collapsing in on itself. You know, and crime is rampant, and there's seemingly no one to stop it. But then, lo and behold, RoboCop appears, and he arrives to break up a gun store robbery. There's these guys, and it shows them breaking into this gun store, murdering the gun store owner, and they're just stealing all these weapons, I guess, to go and commit other crimes. And one of the guys has a bazooka. He sees RoboCop's car coming. He blows it up with a bazooka. It flips and tumbles throughout the air. Lands actually like on its wheels, but like in a smoldering heap. And then the guy blows it up again with another missile, and then somehow I don't really know the consistency. I'll be honest with you of RoboCop's like vulnerability to things is um, a little maddening. But yeah, RoboCop steps out of this smoldering vehicle and just immediately ices these dudes. And like a good thing about this movie is like the action sequences and like the violence depicted is pretty satisfying. Like these guys are getting shot in the chest multiple times, and there's pretty good squib work. You know what I mean? There's blood capsules bursting, and RoboCop has like a pistol, but it's like a long future pistol that he takes out of the holster, like that's in his leg, and he just and just like really just makes quick work of these guys. And it's like, oh man, thank God RoboCop is here. What do we do without him? But RoboCop, while exploring the scene, finds these gentlemen in possession of nuke, and he questions the fourth injured robber about where you guys getting this nuke? Where's this nuke coming from? Tell me. And he gives up this guy, afraid for his life, obviously, because RoboCop just murdered his friends. He's just like, yeah, 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 I'll tell you, whatever, it's fine. Um, so then, obviously, we cut to RoboCop at this place. It looks like a abandoned building of some kind. RoboCop, who in my notes is just identified as RC, busts into this place, and like, there's so much like actual humor in this movie, um, that it's like it is. This movie is like a comic book. You know what I mean? Whereas the first one is like pretty serious most of the time. Like this movie is like just like it's just like you can tell it was written by a comic book artist because like RoboCop literally walks up to this place, knocks on the door, and then some guy like opens like a peephole, and he's like, "Who is that?" And then RoboCop just punches him right through the door and punches the door open. Like, sir, why'd you knock? Um, but yeah, so he RoboCop walks inside, and Kane is there, and he has this bolo tied henchman who kind of looks like Elvis and Bruce Springsteen mixed together. Um, and they're overseeing like all these immigrant Asian and Hispanic women like making like creating nuke, and they're like they're looking over at with approval. They're like, yes, yes, drugs are cool. Yes, can't wait to get these on the streets or whatever. But yeah, so like of course they see RoboCop, and then all hell breaks loose. Bolo tied guy and all the other henchmen of Kane just get out their pistols and start shooting. Obviously, not even caring about if they destroy their product or the people making it. So yeah, gunfight ensues. Pretty satisfying. RoboCop, of course, is just bullets are bouncing off him because he's made of some sort of metal, like his suit is just some sort of like really high grade metal alloy. Which, by the way, RoboCop, in comparison to the first one, his suit is like a metallic-y shimmery blue, whereas in the last one it was like more like a duller silver gray. So the suit it looks like he got an upgrade or something. It looks like maybe it's made out of something different. It looks really cool. And I think this was like the action figure I had that I like never played with because I didn't want to destroy it. Yeah, bullets are bouncing right off of him, and he's just ending dudes' lives left and right, just bup, 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 and it's just like, I mean, like Kane gets away, I guess, but like, I mean, like, how many goons does this guy have? You know what I mean? How many lackeys can even this guy afford? RoboCop just iced like seven of them. And it was at this point that my DVD, um, skipped to the point where I just had to take it out and switch to my VHS copy. But yeah, so RoboCop's blowing these dudes away. We're getting full chest scripts because again, it's an R-rated movie. Whereas in the next one was PG-13, I believe. Because they, and I guess I understand the rationale between making a movie PG-13 rather than R, so you can make more money at the box office or whatever, and have like a larger, larger scale appeal. Be like, oh, bring your kids. It's not that bad. It's not that violent. But it's just like, I don't know. Watching RoboCop 3 and then watching RoboCop like the TV series is like seeing him nerfed like this. It's just like not as fun. And I don't know what that says about us and me. That I'm like, ugh, where's the blood? Where's the violence? It just, I don't know what to tell you. We're here for it. That's what we show up for. I don't really know. But yeah. So I'm not. I don't know where RoboCop's like partner shows up. I guess as backup, but she's super late. Or RoboCop didn't wait for her. I don't really know, but she I can't even remember her name. Lewis, Officer Lewis. Yeah. So RoboCop's partner comes in, and she actually immediately kills two guys because they have to show that she can handle her shit. You remember from the last movie? She's tough. Um, but yeah, I gotta be honest with you. In this movie, Officer Lewis doesn't have much to do. And like she's played wonderfully by, I mean, Nancy Allen, who she's got chops. She's a good actress. She's nominated for Golden Globe Award. She worked with Brian De Palma. She's got what it takes. But yeah, it seems like they don't really know what to do with her in this movie. So yeah, during the gunfight, RoboCop sees this child, like this young, small white child, played by Gabriel Damon. And RoboCop is just like, "Hey, whoa, I'm not going to shoot you. Is everything okay? Do you want to get out of here?" But it turns out this kid is actually one of the bad guys. And because RoboCop is one of his prime directives is to protect the innocent, he can't kill this kid. So this kid gets to jump on him, shoots him, and it's funny because the kid's like smirks and like smiles, and then like runs away like confidently, but like he didn't do anything. Like I really wrote, I'm like, wow, I literally like laughed out loud because the kid shoots RoboCop like dead in like the chest, but the bullet bounces right off. But the kid like he's like the camera, like because you're seeing the kid through RoboCop's like eyes, like RoboCop's point of view, and the kid like smirks so hard, like he really did something. But of course he didn't do anything. RoboCop is fine. He's mostly a robot. You're not gonna kill him with one bullet. But yeah, so then and seeing this kid kind of momentarily distracts RoboCop because it makes RoboCop think of his kid because Alex Murphy, RoboCop's like who RoboCop was before he became RoboCop, kind of seeps into RoboCop's like he remembers things about his family even though he really shouldn't. But yeah, so seeing this kid triggers memories of RoboCop's kid. Yeah, my next note is because there's a scene where you see Nancy Allen walk by, and I was just like, it made me think, I'm like of Carrie, of Nancy Allen and Carrie, which I don't know if you guys have seen Carrie, 1976. Um, I'm sure, yeah, it was one of the best horror movies of all time. But Nancy Allen in that movie is like so smoking hot in that movie, and like I'm like, damn, Nancy Allen has curves. I always forget until I watch Carrie, and then you see her and stuff, and you're like, oh man, oh okay. Um, but yeah, so like at this point, Kane has fled, and all of his henchmen are dead except for one. And this guy, there's a baby there for some reason. I think it belongs to one of the people that Kane is like, um, one of the immigrant girls that Kane is forcing to do his bidding, has like her baby there, I guess. And this guy, not wanting to die, takes this baby hostage, and he's like, "Hey, I'll kill this baby. Let me get out of here. I'll kill this baby." And there's like a brief standoff. Um, And if you remember anything about this movie, I think this is one of the things you remember because it's a pretty cool, well done, if a little comic booky scene where the guy's like, "Listen, put your guns down, or I'll blow this baby away. I swear to God." And then RoboCop is like, "All right, Officer Lewis, put your gun down." And then RoboCop like fakes like he's putting his gun down, but then you see his POV through his little like his visor, his computer visor, and he's like calculating a trajectory, like how he could shoot this guy without hurting the baby. And then like in one split second, he like shoots a metal door on the side of the wall and it ricochets, hits the guy in the back of the head, and kills that guy. And then Lewis swoops in and steals it and like catches the baby. Really fun sequence, really cool. Like as a kid, I was just like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Oh, getting a little hot in here. And my cat's got my cat's body up against my leg, just creating so much heat. Um, but yeah, so then after this, maybe it's the next day or a couple hours later, RoboCop is seen. I guess I don't want to use the word stalking, but RoboCop is like parked outside of his old family's house in their new neighborhood, wherever they live, and he's just looking at them like painfully, forlorningly. I don't think I used that correctly, but like he just like this guy RoboCop, who's like a more machine than man at this point, still has memories of this family, and like he still thinks of himself kind of as Alex Murphy, but he's not, and he can't be with his family, but he just desperately wants to be. It's kind of sad. Um, and this through line isn't really actually explored in the movie. It kind of falls apart later. But I think early on in this movie, in this part of the script, it was like, oh, RoboCop, is he human? Is he not human? What are the consequences of his humanity? What part will it play? Will RoboCop ever be able to be with his family again? And it doesn't really get answered. But yeah, so then RoboCop, I guess, still possesses a lot of memories of his family, so he goes and visits them. Um, but then back at the police station, OCP um, is like how they have to like intervene and be like, "Hey, RoboCop, your wife is suing us because you're causing her emotional distress by stalking her and her son." Because I don't think I'm not sure if the woman, if like RoboCop, if like Mrs. Murphy knows that RoboCop like is like her husband, or if there's anything of her husband left in him. But either way, it's like it's wigging her out. And there's this slick, smarmy OCP lawyer guy, um, who I just identify as smarmy. I think in my notes, or Dick. Um, he's like talking to RoboCop, but he's like, What are you doing? What are you doing to this poor woman? Why don't you just leave her alone? You'll never be able to be a husband to her. You're not even a human being." And he's being really, really mean to RoboCop. And all the doctors and a lot of other police officers just standing there, like watching RoboCop get like kind of punked out by this guy, and it's really kind of uncomfortable. Um, but he's talking to RoboCop, and he's like, "Listen, you're a machine. You're not Alex Murphy, and I want you to say it." He's like, "I'm a machine," and he kind of breaks RoboCop's will in this scene. It's a little, like I said, it's a little depressing. Um, but yeah, then RoboCop is privately reunited with his wife, and the wife is just like, "Well, listen, are you my Alex? Alex, are you in there?" And then RoboCop is just like, "Touch me," and then like the lady touches, and like RoboCop has removed his visor at this point, and the front of his face is like skin, and it's like Alex Murphy's face. Which, like, hey, if you want him to not really be a human being, don't give him a human face. You can give him the brain without the face, right? Especially if it's under a visor most of the time. But yeah, she's like, "Touch me," and she touches his skin, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cold." And then RoboCop is just like, "They made this to honor your husband. I am not your husband. I don't know you." And it's a great fucking scene. It's emotional. It's cold. I mean, it goes to show that like RoboCop is really not a human being, and he kind of comes to accept the fact that he's like, I guess I'm not really Alex Murphy. I guess I'm just RoboCop at this point. Oh man, but okay. So then we cut to the scene. where Dan O'Hurley, who plays the unnamed old man who runs OCP, is meeting with the mayor of Detroit. Which, oh man, this mayor of Detroit character, I don't remember if he was in the first scene or not. Um, but damn, is this dude? He's so funny, man. It's Willard E. Pugh playing Mayor Marvin Cusack. Um, and he's just like this loudmouth, trash talking, um, like mayor who with this gap in his teeth, and he's like a fast talking guy. Oh man, with a lot of attitude. He's so funny. He's such an animated character, and he's like one of the best parts of this movie. So the mayor and the mayor's office is meeting with OCP, and they're like, "Listen, man, we've borrowed so much money from you, and we've done, you've done so much for the city, and we owe you so much money." And they're talking about how like OCP is like coming to collect their debts, and they're like, "Listen, you owe us like $37 million, um, and if you can't pay us, you're gonna have to default, and then the city of Detroit will effectively be run by OCP." And so like this is like obviously the old man and OCP's plan was to get the city of Detroit basically by the balls and be like, "Listen, you pay our debts, or we're going to take over the city." And the city of Detroit is like, "Well, listen, everyone's homeless and there's so much crime. We don't have any money. That's why we've been borrowing money and supplies and stuff from you." And they're like, "Yeah, we know. We knew you'd never be able to pay it back. We manipulated you." And this mayor Marvin Cusack is just like going nuts, calling the OCP president like a senile old bastard. Um, and he's like, I'm calm," because his lawyer's like, "Hey, listen, you gotta relax. You can't be saying this stuff." And he's like, I'm calm. Fuck you, old man. And it's really funny. This mayor of Detroit character is a hoot and a half, truly. Um, so yeah, the mayor storms out, and OCP is then revealed to have been trying to replicate RoboCop. They're trying to create a new RoboCop, one that's less human, more powerful, and more easily manipulated. And like you see this guy Donald Johnson, who's played by Felton Perry, who reprises his role from the last movie. He's like an advisor to the old man, Dan O'Hurley, and he shows Dan O'Hurley like these series of videos where they've tried to create human tissue with like combine human tissue with like cybernetics like they did with RoboCop, but like to like disastrous results. Like they just can't seem to get it right again. And it's like apparently they've spent like $19 million trying to do this, and it shows you a video, and like one of the guys in like this like pseudo RoboCop suit, like goes on a killing spree, and then shoots all these doctors, and then another one literally like rips his helmet off and his skin and face along with it, and he just screams and falls over. So it's like it's a total disaster. And then we're introduced to Juliet Fax, played by Belinda Bauer, who's like a psychologist, who's like a beautiful kind of femme fatale esque psychiatrist psychologist who argues that well, I mean, Alex Murphy was like a rare cop. He was like a rare breed, and the reason that we're having such a tough time creating another RoboCop is because most cops aren't like them. We need to look outside of police officers. So she's obviously and like Dan O'Hurley seems to like her ideas and pander to her because she's gorgeous. But like Mr. Johnson, Mr. Donald Johnson, is like, I don't really trust this girl, and he's right not to. Yeah, that we then cut to RoboCop and Officer Lewis. They're tracking that kid from the previous bust, like the little kid that shot RoboCop, who's obviously for some reason intimately involved with like the production and sale of Nuke. and they see this kid um, dealing with a corrupt police officer. So, and it's this like sloppy, chubby police officer whose name is Duffy, who's addicted to Nuke. So the cop is giving this kid intel about what the police are doing in exchange for Nuke. So yeah, like this kid is literally a integral part of this legitimate criminal enterprise, and it's like I don't even know if he's Nuke's kid or what's going on, but he's for real. By the way, he's like 10 or 12, maybe 13, 15. I don't know what kids' ages are. He's young. So RoboCop, of course, and Officer Lewis bust in and try to apprehend the kid and this cop. And the a scuffle ensues. It's a populated arcade kind of area. Because he's a child. Where else is he gonna set up a meet to sell drugs other than an arcade? Um, and like there's a scuffle, and like RoboCop takes Duffy, and he beats him around, he beats him up a little bit, roughs him up, smashes his face into a video game, and is just like beating him up, trying to get Kane's location. Whereas Nancy Allen pursues that little kid into an alleyway, and Nancy Allen and this kid get into a scuffle, and this kid starts to choke Nancy Allen out. He literally like puts it he takes like a wire and like literally goes around her neck and is like trying to literally murder her. I said this kid is trying to murder a police officer, and I think I wrote in my notes. Yeah, I said I've never wanted a child to die in a movie so bad before. So the kid, so Nancy Allen like manages to get the kid off of her, but he escapes, and then RoboCop gets a location from Duffy about where Kane is holed up making the nuke, and Kane is making the nuke at the local slime facility, or something of the like. And I was just like, what? Um, but yeah, so like then we see RoboCop seemingly the next day, um, going to this slime factory. Like Duffy's like, it's at the slime factory. Please don't kill me. And then immediately jump cut. You see RoboCop in his little police car pulling up to this abandoned factory. And like, there's no Nancy Allen with him. There's no anybody. There's no cops with him at all. And I mean, you got to wonder at times, RoboCop, are you a bad cop? Because like, you should bring backup if you're going to raid a drug warehouse. I mean, you should bring more than Nancy Allen. You should bring the whole freaking brigade. Like, I understand that most of the cops are rioting, but like, where the hell is Nancy Allen even? You couldn't get two more cops. Like Nancy Allen, Officer Lewis is inexplicably not there. No idea why. Um, but yeah, and of course they see RoboCop coming a million miles away, um, and they blow his car up with a bazooka. They love bazookas in this movie, blowing cars up. But it turns out that RoboCop actually wasn't in the car, and that it was a decoy, and then RoboCop sneaks in the back. But this ploy does not work at all because they immediately find RoboCop. Listen, I mean, RoboCop. That's what I'm saying, man. RoboCop, you're not subtle, dude. You're like a giant metal man. Your footsteps so loud, and you're so slow, and you're so bulky. You can't hide behind anything. Like literally, he tries. Like obviously, this is set up as like a plan. RoboCop said, "I'm going to distract him with the old car bit, and I'm going to backtrack around the other side, and then I'm going to sneak in the back." Like they literally blow up the car. They go look in the car. They're like, RoboCop's not here. He must be somewhere else, and they find RoboCop immediately. Um, so RoboCop is like wandering, obviously very noisily, probably through this facility, like Kane's facility, and like I never even noticed this part before, but like while he's in Kane's lair, Kane he stumbles upon Elvis's bones. Like Kane for some reason has an entire like shrine dedicated to Elvis, and then you look to the it pans to the left, and literally Elvis's bones are like in a glass case, inexplicably. No, for no reason. This Kane villain is just like a hodgepodge villain that nothing is ever his motives. Nothing is that his background never explained. But he just, I guess, loves Elvis to the point where he steals his bones and has them. But yeah, so RoboCop is surrounded and trapped by Kane and his goons. Like the little kid shoots RoboCop's hand off. Like RoboCop goes to shoot Kane, and then the little kid from a distance like shoots RoboCop's hand off with the gun. Um, and then like they knock RoboCop over with a big magnet, and then they like pick him up with the magnet and put him on a table. So then, and this part's not great. This is like this part as a kid um, was real rough. It was really really hard to watch because what they do to RoboCop is they tie him up with these like really like heavy duty cables, and then they just painstakingly just use like drills and hammers and like all this like heavy duty equipment to then like dismantle and take apart RoboCop like piece by piece, bit by bit. Like they rip his arm off and his leg off, and like they rip his chest open. I had like some of the Frank Miller RoboCop comics that Frank Miller did after this movie came out, based on his original script. And I had some of those comics, and this was in one of them. And gosh, reading this was like just bummed me out so much as a kid. They said you can't take apart RoboCop. It's brutal. It's like watching like the bug, like the. It's like watching the wings get ripped off a butterfly or something. It's really awful and agonizing. So yeah, they pull RoboCop's legs and arms and off and just dismantle him, and they dump him in front of the police station. And like he's shown in this pathetic pile, gyrating and moaning, and his eyes are like fluttering, and you're like, man, RoboCop is down bad. This is a disaster for RoboCop. This sucks. So this is like, and like RoboCop, you know, being emotional as he was, and a kind of a liability. OCP decides to like not approve his repairs. So RoboCop is just sitting there in agony, um, while like crime continues to get worse and worse in the streets. But that's good for OCP because they want crime to get really really bad, so Detroit will can inevitably just like default to them, and they can take over Detroit. But yeah, so like all RoboCop's like doctors and Lewis and all of his cop friends are like, "Hey man, you got to fix this guy. He's in agony. He's dying here." And they're like, "I can't do anything. My hands are tied." All right, he's gonna take millions of this is gonna be millions of dollars of repairs, and I can't just do it without the proper authorization. So the next scene then shows the kid who his name is Hob, and the bolo tie guy. They bail Duffy, the corrupt police officer, out of jail, just so Kane can torture and kill him for ratting them out to RoboCop, and they cut him like right down the middle. And Kane says this good line, where they were like, "Hey man, I didn't think you were gonna kill Duffy. I thought you were just gonna scare him." And then Kane says, "Well, doesn't he look scared?" As he's like getting cut open. It's a pretty good line. And I'm like, "Oh man, Kane is ruthless, but he's also silly because he likes Elvis and he has a nose piercing. I don't really get this guy." But so we're then shown RoboCop is being put back together, and he's being rebuilt eventually, but but only because Fax, like Dr. Juliet Fax and O'Hurley have teamed up because they want to make RoboCop useless. They want to nerf him basically, just so they can continue to make crime worse in Detroit. So that because the worse things get, the more Detroit has to borrow and like from OCP to protect the streets, the worse Detroit looks and the better OCP looks, and like the closer they get to taking over the city. So One second, I gotta drink a water. Yeah. So yeah, RoboCop is built. Um, is rebuilt, but he's rebuilt with all of these. Like RoboCop before had three directives. You know, they were like serve the public, protect the innocent, um, and another one. But now RoboCop has like hundreds upon hundreds of new directives, and it's to effectively make him useless as a police officer, so that crime continue to run rampant. And just like from what I saw, some of these directives were Directive 233, restrain hostile feelings. Directive 239, be accessible. 241, avoid interpersonal conflicts. 246, don't rush traffic lights. Directive 261, talk things out. Directive 266, smile. So they're bogging RoboCop down with all of these new rules to make him like nice, but also, of course, ineffective and like non-violent, letting criminals basically do whatever they want. And like again, like you don't really know why this Juliet Fax lady, it's like Fax, Faxx. You don't really know why she's doing this. Like you don't like maybe she's just like a corporate climber, a ladder climber, and she wants like oh Hurley to use her ideas and her to get like intimately involved in OCP because she like wants money or recognition or whatever. But it's just like you don't really get a clear. That's never really explained. You never really get a clear reason why this woman is doing all these things. But yeah, so RoboCop's first case back after being rebuilt is a coach and little league team busting up and robbing an electronics store. It's hilarious. Um, so RoboCop and Lewis arrive on the scene, but they insist, and like RoboCop insists on talking things out rather than using force. So he doesn't even have his gun out. And like they're literally getting shot at by this coach and these little kids. And Nancy Allen is forced to literally brain this guy. She just has to shoot him in the head because RoboCop isn't doing anything. But then when they get inside, RoboCop like just like gives these kids a lecture, and they all run away, and RoboCop lets them go. So yeah, RoboCop is essentially feckless now. He has all these directives, um, but it's funny because this does not last very long. This plot point. So yeah, sorry, had a knock at the door, but yeah, RoboCop is he like RoboCop is overhearing how like useless and feckless he is now with all these directives, and they go because they go to like RoboCop's doctors, which is like this woman with a short black bob haircut, and then a couple other nerdy guys, and they work at the police station, but obviously they work in accordance with OCP, and they're like, man, they put all these directives in there. There's nothing we can do about it. Because if we shut him off or try to take out these directives, it can mess with his life support system. We can't really go tampering with this stuff. And Lewis is just like, so what? He's just gonna be useless forever. Um, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. And then RoboCop, like wordlessly, gets up from his little mount in the lab, and he goes across the street, um, past the striking police officers, past everyone. He goes up to this electrical box, and he like sticks his hand in there, and just like gets shocked. He shocks himself using electrical box, and it like reboots him and clears the directives. So this was a problem for maybe like 13 minutes in the movie. But it's like actually kind of a really cool moment because the officers who are striking, they like they like they throw down their signs and quit like striking to go over to RoboCop and see what he's doing if he's okay. And then they like see him lying on the ground motionless, and they're like, oh gosh, we need to get him back to his doctors, and they all lift up RoboCop. It takes like 9 dudes, and they pick up RoboCop, and they're carrying him, their friend, back inside. And it's kind of symbolic because they're stepping over their picket signs, and they're like ending the strike. You know, due to the welfare of their friend. It's actually kind of a beautiful moment because it's like a reunification of the police force now that RoboCop is like back in the saddle, basically. So like they get, and RoboCop's like, no, no, no. He awakens. He's like, no, put me down. I can stand. And he's just like, you know what we gotta do? We gotta go after Kane. And it's like a call to arms. It's pretty cool, actually. So like RoboCop and the reunified Detroit Police Department, like literally, like of course, like if RoboCop had this kind of backup in the beginning of the movie, it would have been a totally different movie. But now RoboCop has like the entire unified police force at his disposal, and they go to Kane's slime factory warehouse. Um, and I think what did I put? Yeah, I put they scorch Earth because like the police officers are wearing riot gear. There's a million of them, and with RoboCop leading them, I mean these guys stand no chance. Henchmen are getting iced left and right by Lewis and by RoboCop and all the cops. Um, RoboCop shoots several dudes without even looking at them. It's really a return to form for him. Um, it's really truly cold blooded. I wrote, and then RoboCop shoots a sniper through the eyeball because like you see the sniper on the like on a balcony like aiming right at RoboCop's head, and the RoboCop just boom blows him. Like he shoots him right through the scope and through the eye, and then you see the whole thing. Special effects are great. But Kane, of course, slippery as he is, escapes in like a rolling drug lab, but RoboCop manages to jump in front, and like he's hanging on the windshield. You know how they do in action movies. Um, for a little bit before Kane like manages to like jerk him off. Oh, before Kane manages to like literally like like shake him off and like he crashes into a wall so RoboCop falls off or whatever. But RoboCop commandeers a motorcycle in the most hilarious fashion because like he's lying on the ground and like a motorcycle jumps over him, another motorcycle jumps over him, and then the third one tries to jump over him and he like catches the guy and throws him off the motorcycle. Really funny. But yeah, so RoboCop gives chase on the motorcycle, and then they get to the point where RoboCop is like in front of Kane, and he turns around and just starts bomb rushing. They're basically playing a game of chicken. Um, and RoboCop literally crashes right into the front of Kane's drug lab, bursts through um, like the front of this SUV thing, and just stops Kane in his tracks. Kane obviously is badly injured, near death, but RoboCop is fine, so he brings him in. So with Kane, in critical condition in the hospital, and RoboCop a hero again, Hobb, the 13-year-old boy, takes over the cult and continues distributing nuke with the help of Kane's girlfriend Angie. But Dr. Juliet Fax, seeing Kane in the hospital, for some reason, she's been convinced the entire movie. I don't think I really said this, but he's convinced the entire movie that like the criminal mind and like sociopaths and psychopaths would be the perfect candidate for the RoboCop 2 suit. So what they do is, so what Juliet Fax does is she takes Kane off of life support in the hospital, intending to put his brain into RoboCop 2. Um, so then they show Kane in surgery, and they show his brain being removed, and you see like brain cutting sounds, and just like it's actually a pretty well done scene because it literally does kind of look like a real brain surgery. They remove the top of Kane's head, and there's all this squelching and slicing sounds. It's pretty gross, but they take out Kane's spinal cord with his brain attached to the top, and then his eyeballs. And there's this scene where like Kane's like, because they have to move quickly or else they're gonna lose brain function. So Kane's like brain and eyeballs and spinal cord is like in a vat of goo, and then you see Kane's point of view, and he's looking at Doctor Fax talking to a surgeon, and the surgeon is just holding like Kane's empty, hollowed out, severed head, and it actually looks pretty good. Like the effects in this movie, I didn't look into the design of them, but they're really good. Um, So yeah, Kane is obviously, some things are in store for him. But we then cut to the Detroit mayor as he's staging a telethon to raise money for the city of Detroit. Um, and there's like a guy doing juggling or like swallowing swords or something. And it shows that they have raised $4,000 of the 38 million. Um, so Hobb, now the cult leader, seeing this, calls up the mayor at his telethon. And while he's doing this, he's eating French fries with the ketchup on the fries. Disgusting. But he offers to bail out the city, and he wants to meet with the mayor. And the mayor agrees. But the mayor's fat Italian lawyer with glasses, who we've seen in the movie, is actually working for OCP. And this fat lawyer guy warns OCP and the old man, Dan O'Hurley. He's like, hey, the mayor is going to meet with someone who says he can bail out the city, and we can't let that happen. And then O'Hurley's like, will RoboCop 2 be ready? And then Dr. Fax is like, yep, he's good. He's all good to go. And then O'Hurley's like, okay, let's have and RoboCane, as I'll refer to him from here on out. He's like, let's send him in. Um, so then we kind of see Kane. He's mostly machine now, and it's funny because like you see Kane's like consciousness or like his brain activity like manifests on a computer screen that's part of his suit. And it looks like it's like a computer generated face that looks like Kane's, like recreated from like his consciousness, and it's like the face of this robot suit, and it's like it literally looks like straight up out of Law and Order, man. The effects during this time, computer generated effects were really bad. So Kane is bribed with a half-gallon of nuke to take out the mayor. Why they have to bribe him with nuke, I have no idea, because I thought the whole design of this new RoboCop 2 was that he was malleable and like more easily manipulated and had less free will than RoboCop, but I guess not. And also for some reason, um, you know, his brain is still addicted to nuke, so they have this nuke addicted robot. So Kane is addicted to nuke, and they literally have this like monster energy sized container of nuke, and they're like, here, we're gonna put this inside your robot suit if you kill the mayor for us. Just silly. So then we cut to the mayor meeting Hobb and his like drug dealers, and they're trying to strike a deal. You know what I mean? Um, and the kid who's by the way 12 or 13 years old, is like, listen, man, you want your city back from OCP? We get it, and we want you to have control of the city because you guys are useless and not good at protecting your city. So like, we give you the millions of dollars you owe OCP to pay him off, and you leave us alone. You let us do what we want to do. Let us sell drugs, without the worries of police or government interference, and we'll give you the money to keep paying off OCP as long as you just look the other way. And they actually make a really compelling argument despite being a bunch of drug addicts and like a child. Because the kid's like, listen, I mean, like, most violent crimes in this city occur because people don't have access to the drugs or are trying to get drugs and are being busted up by police. So if you just allow us to be able to operate, we'll be able to make more nuke, supply it better to people, and supply it to people at a cheaper rate, leading to less crime. And I'm like, I'm as an audience member, I'm like, I'm really actually kind of hard pressed to argue with this guy's logic, this 13-year-old drug addict's logic. So I was like, wow, this actually makes sense. Um, but one of the mayor's associates are like, Marv, we can't deal with these people. These people are criminals. And the mayor of Detroit is like, man, why do you gotta label people? I hate labels. And then one of the fat Italian lawyer with the glasses is like, yeah, you shut up. It's really, there's so much actual like stuff in this movie that's really funny. But yeah, so like at this point, RoboCane busts in, and you see like the full suit and armor for the first time, and boy, does it look like some top heavy metal crab coming in here with these skinny legs and this big, bulky top with this head, and it has like a nuclear symbol on it, and it's like, oh man, it just looks very non-threatening. And they really go out of their way to make it look like not human, but also like still way less cool than RoboCop. Like they did the same thing in the first one with like that robot that he fights at the end with that's just legs and then no arms. But yeah, so like um RoboCane comes in, and of course he has like mounted machine guns, and he just starts mowing people down, like killing all these assailants. He kills many a henchman. He kills fat Italian lawyer who's narking for OCP. Um, he kills his girlfriend Angie by crushing her head. There is some funny symbolism though, because the mayor actually escapes out of like he he like slips into a sewage duct, like a sewage vent, and he like rides out this like coming tide of like sewage water, and then like he just shoots out the side of a building, in the shit water into like the nearby reservoir or whatever, because like he's shit, he sucks, he's down low and filthy. Um, but yeah, so then later we see RoboCop. He rolls up to where the meeting had taken place, and he's alone again. I don't know why he's always going everywhere alone. But he finds Hob, the kid, dying, having been shot to death by Kane. And like, despite what people might say, this scene is actually kind of emotional because the kid um, is like who was RoboCop's like enemy at this up until this point. It's just like now his like RoboCop's like the last person he'll ever see alive. So he's like softening up. Like RoboCop is like kneeling down like next to this kid who's like bleeding out in the back of this van surrounded by all this money and nuke. And he's just like, listen, RoboCop, man, I'm cold. I'm scared. And he's like, listen, man, you're going into shock. I'm gonna get some help. And the kid's like, no, don't leave me. And RoboCop's like, no, I won't. I won't. And then the kid dies, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I really feel I actually really kind of feel something for this kid. Um, but yeah, so next we see OCP officially taking over control of the city from like Detroit and the mayor. And there's a whole press conference, and the old man president is there. And he's like revealing, he's like, oh, this is what we're going to build. This will be the new Detroit, protected by our new model RoboCop 2. And then like RoboCane like descends up through the floor into this like tiny model of future Detroit. Is actually kind of cool. But of course, it's so funny because they're actually being heckled by the old mayor, who escaped, of course, his last murder. Like, the last thing where he almost got murdered. Of course, he's at this press conference still. And who knows how long, the time gap is between those two. But he's there heckling them the entire time. Fiery until the end, that man. Um, but yeah, so, and then, inexplicably, Dan Hurley is like, we're going to clean up Detroit. We're going to get rid of Nuke. Nuke is like, and he's like, admonishing Nuke. And he has, but I don't. In order to admonish and like disparage Nuke, you don't have to have a giant cylinder of Nuke. You know what I mean? Like literally, he's like, you see this? This is Nuke. This is bad. Like I've never been to like a drug PCA, or a drug public service announcement thing, like a dare thing, and I've never seen them actually just produce a bag of heroin and be like, you see this? This is bad. You don't need to bring the drug to the thing to communicate to people that it's bad. So which of course, like the old man speaking in front of everyone about Nuke and having a container of Nuke drives the Nuke addicted RoboCane absolutely batshit crazy. Um, like RoboCop 2 immediately is just like loses his mind because he's like, oh, I really want that Nuke. Like, and he like snatches the remote control that controls him from Dr. Fax and he destroys it. And then like he, you know, has mounted machine guns and he starts firing to the crowd, killing people. But of course, our boy RoboCop is there, and he's been silently watching this entire time. And then he springs into action, and they're fighting, and it's a gun battle. They're fighting each other and tackling each other. It's a pretty good fight. And they're fighting up and down, inside the facility. Um, and then, eventually they fall out a window and they plummet hard, like through the street into the sewers below. And the fight continues. And this is like this is like the grand finale, the coup de grace. These two fighting each other, and like it's so funny. I just kept thinking about this the entire time. I'm like, I don't understand why they always want to make like they tried to make a RoboCop replica in the first one. They did the same thing with this one, and they always make these other RoboCop models, like RoboCop 2. Um, they always make them really bulky and huge. Um, and I'm just like, listen, and like top heavy for some reason, and like unbalanced it seems. So like I'm like it's like a good fight, they're beating each other up. But I'm like, listen, RoboCop is obviously like, superior, even though he's like the original model because he has better instincts. He's way more agile because he's smaller, and he has like joints. Like you should see this RoboCop, this RoboCane like try to walk. I'm like, this dude's not beating anyone up, dude. He's not fast at all. He can barely move. RoboCop is like so much like he's like more agile. But yeah, but like so that doesn't stop. I mean, like because RoboCop being smaller than RoboCane isn't really making a dent in the armor. So RoboCane is continuing to like just rampage and run amok, and he's murdering all these cops and civilians. And they're fighting. Officer Lewis shows up again. Like I said, I think I mentioned her name like 5 times. She doesn't really have a lot to do in this movie. And Nancy Allen commandeers like an OCP like armored transport car, and she like rams RoboCane into a wall with it like unfazed. So like it's like the ultimate stalemate basically. But then of course because RoboCop is intelligent, he has the mind of a decorated police officer, and like Kane is some drug addict who's all he can think about is drugs. I mean, RoboCop comes up with a daring plan, and he's like, hey, you want this nuke, right? You want this drug? And Kane's like, yeah, yeah, duh, really want it. So then he like throws. Oh, so sorry, Nancy Allen has the cane, and she and RoboCop like come up with this plan, and Nancy Allen is like using the nuke to like distract Kane. She's like, "You want this drug? You want this drug?" And Kane's like, "Yeah, yeah," and he's only focusing on the drug. So RoboCop, it's like a robotic horsefoot. RoboCop like climbs up the wall and then jumps on Kane's back while he's distracted. And then he proceeds to then like rummage around in the back of Kane's, like RoboCane's head, and then he like rips off some armor, and then he grabs RoboCane's like spinal column and brain, and he like rips it out the back of his head. And I'm like, oh, this is done. That's your finishing move, dude. That's a fatality. So he rips out his brainstem, and then RoboCop just proceeds to like jump off of RoboCane's back, and like in one fluid motion, just slam the brain and spinal column like on the hard concrete. Even though I'm like, hey man, you already ripped it out. Like that robot is effectively useless. You don't really need to beat up this dude's brainstem. It's already been removed from the rope. But and I'm not. I don't even shit you not. After he slams on the ground, he then gives it like a second. I'm not even kidding you. RoboCop literally gives it like an elbow drop because he's like, oh man, the robot isn't falling over yet. The brain must be powering him somehow, even though the brain is like 10 feet away from the robot and you just smashed on the ground. He then goes in for one more elbow drop, and then that last elbow drop does it, and the brain, and the music crescendos, the brain explodes, and then Kane like malfunction, Robo Kane malfunctions and falls over. And the day is saved. RoboCop 1 prevails. Robo Kane is defeated. Um, and it's basically the end of the movie. They say, oh, Johnson, Hurley, and Smarmy Lawyer are like all worried. They're like, hey, this could really come back on us really hard. This was an OCP product that like literally murdered like dozens of people just now. So then they decide to blame the whole thing on Dr. Juliet Fax. And I guess she's going to take the fall of it so the rest of them can go free. Um, and, oh man, the old man played by Daniel Hurley, so cold blooded. He steps over a dead police officer to leave, and they get in the limo and they drive away. Um, and then, literally, the last exchange of the movie is Nancy Allen going like, "Man, I can't believe that guy's really going to get away with it." Not that I'm 100% sure how she knows that he's going to get away with it because they just agreed to throw Juliet Fax under the bus privately. So it totally looks like this guy's going to go down. But Nancy Allen's, I'm like, he's going to get away with it, isn't he? And then RoboCop's like, well, what are you going to do? We're only human. And then the movie ends. Really abrupt ending. And also a corny line to end a movie. But that's RoboCop 2. Really, really, really just a silly goose time. Like, it's got everything you love about the first one, but then a bunch of, like, kind of semi schlocky humor and baffling, baseless decision making. Um, and there it is. So what would I say is the best scene of RoboCop 2? I guess I really like that initial bust where he busts up those guys robbing that gun store. That's good. That's a good sequence. The RoboCop like getting ripped apart, as jarring and like kind of horrifying as it is like well done. And it's kind of interesting to see RoboCop, like this impenetrable being, kind of made vulnerable and defeated, kind of. And then, of course, like the last scene with like RoboCane and RoboCop fighting is awesome. And then the scene where RoboCane busts up the mayor and Hobbs meeting, that's also awesome. Not a great scenes. Best performance in this movie, it's hard to say. I don't think it's RoboCop, of course, because he's just playing like a robot. And Nancy Allen has nothing to do in this movie, so it's not her. I think the mayor does a really really great job. He's a really really funny character. Daniel Hurley, of course, as the cold-blooded president is awesome. Daniel Hurley's great in everything. And honestly, that kid is pretty good at being like a slimy, ruthless criminal child. And then that smarmy lawyer guy is really good at being a smarmy lawyer. How would I improve this movie? Okay, so like I love this movie. Don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff while watching, could definitely improve. I think develop Kane more as a villain. I understand that like OCP is like a villain and Kane is a villain, but like Kane had almost no consistency to him. With the whole Elvis thing, and then he's also like a cult leader, and he like kind of sees himself as Jesus, but at the same time he's just like a drug dealer with a nose piercing and he's bald. And I don't really understand. Like, I didn't really understand. Like, I know his motives are. I mean, like, are you trying to make money? Like, I don't. And like, I'm like, oh, you're really ruthless, but at the same time, you're second in command as a child. I don't know. Just like develop that villain a little more, maybe. Um, Maybe cut the RoboCop and humanity stuff, like with the wife, and it's just like, oh, is he Alex Murphy? Is he a man or is he a machine? Like that stuff doesn't go anywhere really. Also, the new directives when they like rebuild RoboCop with all those new directives, and then almost immediately um, he gets back to normal. Like I know when you're watching a movie, you're like, oh man, how long is this new directives thing with RoboCop being nerfed? How long is this gonna last? And then it doesn't last at all, and you're relieved. But it's just like you could probably just cut that whole thing out. Like what you could do is you could make it so, oh man, RoboCop was badly injured. He doesn't know. We don't know if he's gonna make it through. And then OCP, just keeps him in pieces. so that crime can get worse, and then they can, more necessitate a need for OCP to take over, and then eventually, like the doctors, like his friends and doctors, rebuild him or something, like without OCP permission, and then RoboCop like gives a speech to unify the police or something, and then it just proceeds from there. Like you could have cut like all that stuff about the new directives because it just seems like a plot thread where like just like the through lines of RoboCop's like humanity um, and stuff is like it just doesn't really pan out. So I feel like you could kind of just cut that out, and it'd be a shorter movie, but also just like a tighter movie. You know what I mean? Like just develop Kane more, maybe even just show some scenes of Kane doing other ruthless stuff. Um, and then skip the new directive stuff. I mean, sure, it cuts your movie down to like maybe an hour 40, hour 45, but I think that's fine. You know, and give Nancy Allen more to do. She has like 5 scenes in this movie, and she was such a prominent part of the first one, and then in the third one, like she gets killed almost immediately, and that's like RoboCop's like call to action. But yeah, give her more to do in this movie. But there's still lots to like about this movie. I mean, Kane and like the whole like nuke as a drug is like really cool, especially because it was like the 80s and 90s, and like I'm pretty sure like crack cocaine and like stuff like that was going on. So that was like drugs do play a real role, and oftentimes are like a gateway to really like violence and more crime. The RoboCop death was like really gruesome and just like kind of almost unbearable. So like to have something like that in a movie is interesting. The political stuff between OCP and the local government is like really great and really interesting. Um, and I think it really is kind of like it shows like the power of corporations. It kind of like I mean these movies are like kind of like political commentaries about the time. Like it was like these movies started in the 80s. It was like Reagan's America, where like, oh, we live in a free market. Big business is awesome. Bigger is better. And corporations like are greedy. And we still deal with that today. And like, I don't know, that stuff is great. And like the satirical commercials, that's really funny. I mean, the mayor's character is like had me stitched up the whole time. Dan O'Hurley is like a perfect silent villain. Thank God he was in this one. And then the next movie is replaced by Rip Torn, which is like not great. Not that I don't like Rip Torn, but I don't think it works. Um, just like it's like a great anti-capitalism dystopian movie, and like the action sequences and like the violence and the effects are awesome. So like I mean, just like it's a good time. It's a fun time at the movies. All right, so why would people miss this movie? Why is it a movie you might have missed? There's a lot of reasons. I think mainly this movie got really, really, really bad reviews when it came out, and I can read some of those in a second here. But I think that's one of those things where like opening weekend it does okay, video rentals it does okay because there's like no stakes. But like after a movie comes out and it's then torn apart by critics, you're not gonna have good weekends after that. And like I think like it's gonna forever be kind of tarnished by these like bad reviews. Like bad reviews for whatever reason do successfully keep people away from a lot of movies. Also, people just kind of hate sequels a lot, and I mean, people also just a lot of times don't really like sci-fi or robots. Especially like for adults, they're like, yeah. Um, but yeah, so let me read some of these. Let me read some of these reviews. Yeah, like so, like yeah. I mean, like listen to this puritanical bullshit from Roger Ebert. Kane's sidekicks include a violent, foul-mouthed young boy named Hob, who looks to be about 12 years old but kills people without remorse, swears like Eddie Murphy, and eventually takes over the drug business. The movie screenplay is a confusion of half-baked and unfinished ideas. The use of that killer child is beneath contempt. It's like, come, relax, Roger Ebert. Guess what, buddy? Kids are criminals sometimes. How much you hold your horses? Janet Maslin of the New York Times says, unlike RoboCop, a clever and original science fiction film with a genuinely tragic vision of its central character, RoboCop 2 doesn't bother to do anything new. It freely borrows the situation, characters, and moral questions posed by the first film. The difference between RoboCop and its sequel is the difference between an idea and an afterthought. And she says that that they're exploiting the inherent shock value of such an innocent-looking killer, referring to Hobb. And Variety wrote that this ultra-violent, it's not that violent, nihilistic sequel has enough technical dazzle to impress hardware fans, but obviously no one in the Orion front office filmmakers were told that less is more. But then you have people like Jay Scott of the Globe and the Mail, um, who admired the film, calling it a sleek and clever sequel for fans of violent but clever action films. You get the gore of Total Recall and the satirical smarts of Gremlins too, in one high-tech package held together by modest B-movie strings. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that's perfect. I think that sums it up. He actually, and that guy, Jay Scott, goes on a bad mouth, which was Paul Verhoeven, director of RoboCop 1's next movie. But yeah, so like stuff like that. I mean, first of all, I think film critics are the worst. I think, gosh, like if they don't like a movie, they have to tell you that they don't like the movie in the most dramatic, like insane ways. I'm like, hey man, like Roger Ebert, dude, can it? Like R.I.P. of course, and he had some good takes, but like I don't know, he's so puritanical and like holier than thou that I'm like, yeah, man, no offense. I mean, like kids are criminals. Kids are just as murderous sometimes as adults are. Like it's just, especially like this is the dystopian future. You can only assume things are going to get way worse. So let's just relax. Oh, I guess. Oh, so okay. So I guess the visual effects were done by Phil Tippett, who's the guy from the first film. So I guess that's why it looks pretty good still. Film, like I said, was filmed chiefly in primarily in Houston, Texas. Let's okay. So now we can go into like like some production notes, details, trivia, things like that. So I'll just real quick because I know we're running a bit long here. Um, oh, okay. So yeah, the RoboCop suit for this film was constructed purely of fiberglass, and this was done to allow Peter Weller more freedom in terms of movement, and it gave the suit a more metallic look. So that's why it looks different than the first film. Peter Weller actually really distanced himself from this movie, and then he actually didn't reprise in RoboCop 3. He criticized the script, saying it lacked the spine and soul of the original. And Weller, I guess, tried to convince Frank Miller and Kirsch that the third act needed a morality angle instead of just being a shoot 'em up, but producers felt the battle between RoboCop and Kane was sufficient. So Peter Weller not very happy with this movie, which like as another thing that maybe people, if this guy's going to openly in the media criticize a movie he was just in, I don't think that's really going to inspire people to go see it. Um, I guess this script was heavily rewritten because all of the Frank Miller's original script was kind of unfilmable due to budgetary concerns. Um, and that's why, like I said earlier, in 2003, Miller's screenplay was adapted into a comic book series titled Frank Miller's RoboCop. Uh, Irvin Kershner, not the original director. I guess the original director was Tim Hunter, but then Hunter was replaced by Kirshner. And according to Nancy Allen, Kirshner took out all the intelligence and humor. Um, and then Nancy Allen has said that she did not like working with Irving Kirshner. And then after his death in 2010, said that she hated him and hated working with him. Yeah, I guess Paul Verhoeven and screenwriter Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner from the first movie were approached about doing a sequel, and their idea for a sequel is actually really cool. I read this the other day, um, and he wanted to do a follow up to the original, um, and their draft kind of consisted of that I guess in this draft, RoboCop was to be shot and pulverized to metallic dust by a cannon in the very beginning, and then he would be resurrected 25 years later in an even more dystopian future, where he becomes a pawn in the struggle between all powerful corporations and the government. Um, and that RoboCop was actually going to have a love interest. So I guess I won't lie to you, that version sounds really awesome. Which are eventually, and I think the studio liked the idea even, but the writers were given a hard deadline that Newmeyer and Miner and Verhoeven couldn't meet. So then they passed, and Verhoeven moved on to shoot Total Recall, and then Frank Miller and them were brought in. But I guess Newmeyer and Miner's rough draft are going to be the basis for RoboCop Returns, which is a sequel that's going to be supposedly coming out in the next couple of years. It was announced in 2019. Interestingly enough, this movie depicts Detroit as being cash strapped um, and owing millions of dollars to OCP and them having default on those. And it actually kind of, and this movie actually kind of predicted real life events because in 2013, the city of Detroit had to file for a Chapter 9 bankruptcy with an estimated debt of like 20 billion. So that's pretty interesting. This was Irvin Kershner's final film before his death. Um, yeah, I mean, pretty decent director. Didn't really direct a lot, as far as I know. I think he directed like maybe like two or three other movies besides the one that we mentioned. So, and I mean, yeah, this movie was in 1990. He died in 2010, so he didn't direct a movie for like 20 years. According to Craig Hayes, Robo Kane was conceived as being unbeatable, and so they thought to make his design contain many complex parts. Um, and I guess Craig Hayes wanted to make it more animalistic, but Tim Hunter, the first director, insisted on a more anthropomorphic look, because humans still make the worst monsters. Um, and the design is a cross between an angry bodybuilder and a medieval knight. And the robot it features a lot of it has a lot of features that would almost make it look like a robot equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. I guess that draft by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner uh, was the plot of the pilot episode of the RoboCop TV series, which I've actually never seen because I heard it's like mostly for kids, and it's like not as violent or gritty, but maybe it would be worth watching. RoboCop 2 had the second highest body count in movies released in 1990. It killed off 58 people on screen, following Die Hard 2 at 162. Frank Miller, ever committed, showed up to on set every day during filming, even though he was not required to. I guess Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta, was originally offered the chance to write the film but turned it down. I guess Peter Weller had to be heavily convinced to return because he hated working in the suit, and I guess that's probably why they redesigned that suit so that he had more mobility. Oh, this is interesting. Belinda Bauer, who played Dr. Fax, later went on to earn a doctorate in psychology in real life. Huh. I guess life does imitate art. I guess Peter Weller enjoyed working with Irvin Kershner, so that's nice. A lot of Irvin Kershner trash talk in this trivia. Yeah, I guess. And Frank Miller uh, actually cameos as Frank the chemist who makes the drug nuke for Kane in his truck. And when Irvin Kershner cameos when Dr. Julia Fax is reviewing death row inmates, the files of death row inmates on her computer, when considering who to put in, whose brain to put in RoboCop 2, I guess the first one you see is Irvin Kershner. That's pretty neat. So yeah, there we go. That's RoboCop 2. And sorry that we went so long, almost 2 hours here. I think this might be our longest episode ever, but I guess with all the business we had to tend to at the beginning, I guess it does make sense that we would go a little long today. It's the return. So hopefully I'll be able to keep this up this time and be able to keep doing this as much as as often as I'd like to. Um, I recently bought 2010: A Space Odyssey, or 2010, The Year We Made Contact, a sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. I bought that on Laserdisc, so that might become a sequel summer. And if not, I'm definitely just going to do it eventually anyway, because that movie is not as bad as people say it is. Especially because, no offense, 2001: Space Odyssey is really boring. Yeah, and then the movie Paycheck with Ben Affleck I recently bought, and then Next with Nicolas Cage and Julianne Moore, bought that too. So expect those to be coming within the next year and a half. And I know at this point you probably think you can't trust me because I always say I'm going to do movies, then I never do them. The list at this point being maybe like 10 to 20 movies long that I've said you're going to do, and then we don't do. But again, it all depends on like the whims and the whispering winds and however I feel during that week and whatever I feel like doing that day. So, but we're going to stick with the sequels for now, and there'll be more coming soon. And I just appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen. And I'm going to try to have multiple guests on some of these. I'm going to try to have guests on a lot of these episodes this summer. I just gotta, really kind of corner some people, get firm answers out of them. But I know we have a guest for Halloween too, and then maybe some other ones as well. So I'll keep you posted. Anyway, I do appreciate you listening again. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you guys have a pleasant day. And once again, this was RoboCop 2, which is unfortunately not streaming anywhere. You're gonna have to probably pay for it on Amazon if you want to see it. Anyway, have a great day. Talk to you later.